Well, good morning.
Good morning.
What a beautiful day. Do you have that beautiful feeling things are going to go our way? Makes me feel like all things are possible. My name is Ruth Robarge. I'm happy to be your moderator this morning. We want to welcome you all here to All Souls Unitarian Universalist Church. Are there any visitors here today that would like to introduce themselves or stand up and at least say your name? Or if you're sitting next to somebody who's new or you brought somebody, you could introduce them? Looks like it's all family. Well, that is just fine. We do have a wonderful Sunday Plus brunch today, or lunch today. So if you are visiting and didn't want to introduce yourself, do walk down to the end of the corridor to Conover. That's our fellowship hall. and say you're visiting, and you will be our guests for lunch. So even if you didn't introduce yourself, you can still get in on a free lunch. That is all I have to say this morning, except that, oh, it's a beautiful day.
We can't just go on today with business as usual. As many of you have probably heard, there has been another school shooting this week. It is already the 7th school shooting in 2018, and we are only 7 weeks in. Our nation's heart should be breaking, but I am afraid that our collective heart is becoming callous. We've seen so much violence, and not just in our actions, but also in our words, in our political forums, and on social media. We run the risk of becoming numb to the enormity of pain, hatred, isolation, and depression that our fellow citizens are encountering. 75 years ago, African-American author Richard Wright was chronicling the origin and history of Black oppression in this country. He found spiritual strength in the midst of all the misery of rural poverty and the weariness of the hard life that he found in the northern ghettos. He said, quote, "Our churches are where we dip our tired bodies in cool springs of hope, where we retain wholeness and humanity despite the blows of death. It is important that we come together in good times and in bad times to support, comfort, encourage, and challenge each other. It is important that we connect with each other, even when some of us might be experiencing the need or desire to isolate, to withdraw. It is important that we come to church, to this community, to care for our tired bodies and for the tired bodies of our neighbors and friends, especially our neighbors who are threatened with the blows of death, neighbors threatened with deportation, gun violence, or the loss of their health care, or sexism, sexual assault, harassment, and bullying, neighbors threatened with loneliness, isolation, or loss of hope. To care for our tired bodies, we must know and admit that they are tired. We must tell ourselves and others that we have needs, that we have griefs and losses, along with our joys and celebrations. Some days we come to church to give blessings to and share blessings with our fellow journeyers. And some days we come to church because we need a blessing. In a moment, we are going to commemorate the lives of 17 students and teachers who died this week at the hands of a young man with an assault rifle. It is important and valuable to think about, to honor, and to pray for the families of those affected. But I have listened to multiple students who attend Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High that survived the shooting. They want more than thoughts and prayers. They are calling on elected officials and their fellow citizens to do more. They are demanding action. I urge us to listen to them. This morning, I invite you to ask yourself what else you can do. I know that there are various student protests and teacher protests being planned and organized. I know that there are many amazing organizations advocating for smarter gun laws. Please take a moment this week to listen to their stories. Feel free to get angry, and then let's figure out how to channel that holy and well-placed anger. Please join me in a moment of silence to honor these lives senselessly lost. I'm glad you came here today. Thank you for taking the risk of connection, of community, and of worship. Because our worship is where we dip our tired bodies in cool springs of hope, where we retain our wholeness and humanity despite the blows of death. And in this spirit, let us light our chalice.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Evan, and I light this chalice for acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations.
Thanks, Evan.
So please stand and affirm with me our words of covenant. Goodwill is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Okay, please be seated.
Could I have all the kids come forward for Story for All Ages? Well, hello there, everyone. It's good to see you all. Happy Sunday morning. So today I have a story for you about a mouse and a frog. There was once a mouse and a frog who were the best of friends. They talked and talked and talked to each other, and they listened and listened and listened to each other. They knew everything about one another. They held nothing back. They had no secrets. They knew each other's fears and dreams and joys and sorrows. Anyone that knew them knew that they were just the best of friends. It seemed like they'd known each other for multiple lifetimes. But there was a problem, because the mouse, she could only live on the land, right? But the frog could live in the land, on the land or in the water, because he is what? An amphibian. You knew that. So they would talk and talk and talk when they were on the land, but then for weeks at a time, sometimes the frog would be in the water. And the mouse, she just got so sad, and she missed the frog. What do you think she did to solve this problem? Go in the water. That's a good guess. But what happens when a mouse goes in the water? It might drown. It has to hold its breath. It tried that, but it couldn't find the frog. Yeah. This is one of your clues. She concocted a risky plan. She found a string, and she tied it around her ankle, and she found the frog and tied the other end around the frog's ankle. So then they could always be connected. At any point, if they wanted to find the other or talk to the other, they could just give a simple tug, and their friend would know that they needed them, right? But as you can imagine, this plan had a lot of snags in it, right? Often the string got tangled with weeds and rocks and fish, right? But one thing they hadn't thought about also was a snag. Does anybody here know what types of animals eat mice? Yeah. Cats, exactly. Who else?
Frogs can eat anything that's smaller than them if they feel like it.
Frogs?
It's
That's a good point, frog. A big enough frog might be able to. How about you? Snakes, yeah. I heard eagles. These are all great guesses. In this story, it wasn't an eagle, but it was a raven. There was a raven, and he was very hungry, and he was flying around, and he saw the mouse. And the mouse got really scared, and the mouse saw the raven. Oh no. She ran and hid But the raven has really good vision. The raven still found the mouse. And then the raven swooped down and grabbed the mouse with her talons. I know, it's scary, right? And flew away. And who thinks they know what happened next?
Well, since the two strings were attached to the ankle, the frog got dragged out with them.
Exactly.
Help save the
Because they were attached by the string, the frog got caught too. So then, picture this, a raven flying through the sky with a string attached to it and a frog. From down on the ground, no one could see the little mouse in the talons. It was hiding. And people were wondering, all the people out were wondering, how in the world did that raven catch a frog with a string? The frog can hide underwater. How did that happen? And as the frog flew through the air, it answered, "It is the force of friendship." Our storyteller, Rumi, is warning us about the dangers of friendship. I mean, it's important to connect to people, right? Friendship's important, but also there's risks involved. But now I don't want you to think that the lesson here is don't make friends, because it might hurt you. It's important to have friends, because if the frog wouldn't have been connected to the mouse, it wouldn't have known that the mouse was in trouble when the mouse was in trouble, right? I wonder if I can have one volunteer. There's a few hands. Okay, you raise your hand first. So I'm going to have you be a frog. Okay. We're attached, right? We're going to pretend like that's around your ankle, but really just grab onto it really tight, okay? Really tight. All right, what's going to happen when the raven comes to snatch the mouse? I'm the mouse in this story. Oh, the frog's coming with. Okay, yeah, you're a mouse, you're a frog too, aren't you? That's the next part of the story. All right, I need more volunteers now. What's gonna happen if the mouse is attached to a bunch of frogs? Can I get more help? Who else wants to be a frog? Yeah, come grab the rope.
I'm a very strong
Come grab the rope.
Sir, I'm a very strong person.
Come grab the rope, everyone. Whoever wants to be a frog, grab the rope. All right, now what's gonna happen when the raven comes to snatch the mouse? Anybody know? What do you think? All the frogs will? Okay, let's test. Here comes the raven.
I'm very heavy.
Whoa.
I'm very heavy.
Look what happens. Look what happens when a mouse is supported by a whole community of frogs.
I'm very heavy.
Yeah. So in this story, I want to make sure the lesson's clear. The mouse was supported by her community, right? She had a whole community of frogs that were connected to her. So that then, in our story, this raven might be sadness, it might be bullying, whatever it is, whenever that thing comes, that bad time, the mouse is connected to a bunch of people who know what she's going through and who can help her. So I'm wanting to give you 2 challenges today. One, I want you to find someone in your community who supports you and thank them. And secondly, I want you to think about who in your life might not have much of a community or much support, and how you can connect to them and how you can support them. Thanks for coming up today, guys. You can go back to your seats as we sing the hymn.
We sing now together our songs of thanks.
we pledge ourselves in confident, firmly to stand. And every week here at All Souls, we pledge ourselves to live in peace, to seek the truth, and to help one another. And one of the ways that we help each other is by naming the joys and sorrows that we have and honoring the joys and sorrows that others have. Today, if you are experiencing a rare joy or a profound sorrow, I invite you to come forward, share it with us in a sentence or two, and place a flower in the vase. If you prefer to share your journey when the cameras are turned off, I will leave some time for us to do that at the end.
So this was a really volcanic and tremendously shocking and disappointing week. But one of the things that really impressed me was the profundity of the students who expressed themselves after the event. They let us know how much us adults have let them down, and they advocated for the kinds of action they want to see. I'm hoping that we will listen to them and, as individuals and also members of groups, make it safer for them to go to school and live their lives.
My name is Amy Robertson, and I have a joy and a concern with one event. Joe and I are very happy that our son Ethan got his driver's license on Friday. Such a huge milestone for a young person, but I admit that it has probably been my greatest fear for him to go out in a car. And the teenagers with the accident earlier in the week, it just, when we let him go out Friday night, it was like, be careful, be careful. And, but we are very happy for him. And
So I have a joy, and I also have a concern. One, the joy is that at the end of January, it was my mom's birthday, and she turned 40, and and that's really, really nice. And my concern is about what is going on in this country right now. So that.
Hi, I'm Carrie. This is Josie, and we were very sad this week to lose our sweet Barney dog of 12 years. He left us.
Hey, I'm Arabella, and I have a concern which is really deep and about life. So everybody dies at a point, like at some point, and I've just been scared because my pets are getting old, and someday it will probably happen and they'll die, and I'm just afraid of that because I really love my pets. I mean, I know all of you love your pets if you have any, or love family members, so that's my concern.
I'm Jane, and I have a joy that just is so incredible. My grandson, who is in his late 30s, on Valentine's Day brought me a gift, and he said it's in the backyard, and I said, is it a dog? And he says, no, Grandma, it's not a dog. He had managed to find on Google somewhere a car that is a replica of the car I drove probably 40 years ago. He had it painted the same color, had the upholstery done. So I've been driving a toy car around with the stupid grin on my face ever since Valentine's Day.
Let's turn the cameras off for a moment and just make space for anyone else that wants to very much for sharing. In this community, we cherish each other, and we cherish coming together regularly to become a stronger community. These bonds are formed and deepened when we take the risk of sharing with one another. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to turn to a neighbor and answer some questions. Look around and find someone, maybe someone you don't know very well, preferably not someone you live with. Extra points for talking to someone under 18. Okay, now once you've found your partner, here are your 2 questions. What was something this week that scared you or worried you? And secondly, what was something this week that made you feel strong or reminded you of your strength? We'll spend 2 minutes on each question. I will strike the drum here in between the questions and again at the end. And thank you in advance for your courage and vulnerability. Make sure you switch to the second question if you haven't yet already. Thank you so much for taking the risk today of sharing with another. I am very glad that it's hard to have you stop talking because you're wanting so much to share with each other. Let's sing our children to their religious education classes. Please join me.
Together right, good morning. Hey, I'm Angela Allard. I'm a member of the Social Responsibility Board, and our UU thing is standing on the side of love. One way that I do that is through my work with immigrants, with the Advocates for Immigrant Rights and Reconciliation. And I'd like to introduce you to Diana Martinez. She's our new organizer with AIR, the Advocates, and we'd be happy to talk with you afterwards out at the table if you have any questions.
Hello, nice to be here with you all. So I've been working this week with Crescencio and his family. He's a hardworking father of 4 who was recently detained and is at the risk of being deported. He doesn't have a criminal record. He's the sole provider of the family, and he's a good man, and his family needs him. They have a sick son, Anthony, who has a serious medical condition and has only gotten worse since his father has been detained, and he's the one that takes him to the hospital visits and does whatever he can for his son because their mom has a disability. So AIR has been fighting and organizing to help prevent families like Crescencio's from being detained and from being at risk of deportation. And we're also building a network to help prevent more stories like this. So if you could please consider making donations to help us fund this work. At the time we're in, we know it's going to keep happening, so we know we need to organize and we need to fight. I also urge all of you to come march with us on March 2nd. It's a Friday. It's going to be a first Friday at 6 o'clock. We are going to be marching with Dreamers and the community to urge the Congress people to pass a DREAM Act without any add-ons that will harm the community. So hopefully we see you all there. We have flyers out in the table after, and if you think you'll come, please let us know and we can give you a reminder call. Thank you.
When you're down and troubled and you need some love and care, and nothing is going right, close your eyes and think of me, and soon I will be there to brighten up even your darkest night. You just call out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running to see you again. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, all you have to do is call, and I'll be there. Yes, I will. You've got a friend. If the sky above you grows dark and full of clouds, and that old north wind begins to blow, keep your head together and call my name out loud. Soon you'll hear me knocking at your door. You just call out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running to see you again. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, all you have to do is call, and I'll be there. Yes, I will. Now ain't it good to know that you've got a friend when people can be so cold? hurt you, yes, and desert you, and take your soul if you let them. Oh, but don't you let them. You just call out my name, and you know wherever I am, I'll come running, running, yeah, to see you again. Winter, spring, summer, or fall, all you have to do is call, and I'll be there, yes, I will. You've got a friend, you've got a friend. Ain't it good to know that you've got a friend?
So join me as we dedicate our offering. We dedicate our offerings and our actions to the mission at the heart of this congregation, to build a respectful, caring community, to inspire personal and spiritual growth, and to create a compassionate society. Thank you.
One of the best-loved poets in English literature is John Donne, who is also an Anglican priest. In 1624, when he was severely ill, he penned this meditation, and I think it's just amazing that almost 400 years later it still really resonates. No man is an island entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less. As well as if a promontory were, as well as if a manor of thy friends or of thine own were. Any man's death diminishes me, because I am involved in mankind, and therefore never send to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee.
I struggled this week trying to decide whether I should offer this reading in its original language or in a version that utilizes gender-inclusive language. I can see the pros and cons of each. I believe in honoring carefully crafted words, knowing that most writers choose words with painstaking specificity. I believe that sometimes, for a century-old thought to be understood by modern ears, slight adaptation can be very helpful. And I also believe that sometimes we ought to prioritize the impact of the words over authorial intent. In this spirit, I offer this reading again with slight adaptation for gender-inclusive language. No one is an island entire of itself. Everyone is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less, as well as if a promontory were, as well as any manner of thy friends or of thy own were. Anyone's death diminishes me, because I am involved in humankind. And therefore, never send to know for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee.
Each morning, we hold out the chalice of our being to be filled with the graces of life that abound, air to breathe, food to eat, companions to love, beauty to behold, art to cherish, causes to serve. They come in ritual procession, these gifts of life, whether we deserve them we cannot know or say, for they are poured out for us. Our task is to hold steady the chalice of our being. We carry the chalice with us as we go, either meandering aimlessly or with destination in our eye. We share its abundance if we have any sense, reminding others as we remind ourselves of the contents of the chalice we don't deserve. Water from living streams fills it, if only we hold it out faithfully. We give back, if we can, something of ourselves. Some love, some beauty, some grace, some gift. We give back in gratitude, if we can, something like what is poured into the chalice of being for those who abide with us and will follow. Each morning, we hold out the chalice of our being to receive, to carry, to give back.
Imagine with me for a moment that we are coming off of some hard winter months and you are feeling particularly low. Let's call it a combination of cabin fever, winter blues, and news nausea. The weather hasn't been overly biting, but it hasn't been exactly tropical. Every few days, it seems your phone or TV is dinging or droning with news headlines that depress you, infuriate you, and shock you. And they go on at a constant pace. It seems like there is no way it could ever end. It might continue ad nauseum. And every few days, as the headlines keep breaking, and tragedies, suffering, scandal, and injustices continue, you feel a little less shocked. At some point, it becomes exhausting to continue the outrage. Your reservoir is drying up, and it doesn't help that you have some personal battles as well. Maybe a loved one is sick or dying. Maybe a child, employer, or acquaintance is being particularly difficult. Maybe you are beginning to doubt a career change or struggle in a romantic relationship. With all this overwhelm, it wouldn't be surprising if a certain feeling of numbness comes over you. That is understandable. You are not Atlas. You cannot hold the world on your shoulders. On these days of overwhelm, where do we turn? What breaks this funk? Do any of you ever have these days? These days where no matter what is happening around you or what exciting seeming things are right next to you, you just can't get happy. You can't force a smile. You just feel an ever-pervasive sense of discontent. Well, don't worry, you're not alone. We've all been there at one point or another. But what I'm curious about today is what we do when we're there. You have the choice in those hard and lonely moments to isolate or to connect. And believe me, I know that for each and every one of us, a part of us will always think it will be easier to isolate, to withdraw. Self-protection, independence, self-sufficiency. These characteristics that we love and laud so much, and they aren't bad. There's a time and place for those protective qualities. But when we're feeling alone, hurt, heartbroken, and discontent, that is when we need community. And that is when we need church. It can be such a balm to our souls to connect with this ragtag group of people held together in love by a beautiful covenant. A covenant where we pledge to walk with each other through good times and hard times. Have you ever witnessed one of these life-giving connections that sometimes occurs here at All Souls? Maybe it is a retired widower who has extra time on his hands with stories to share, wisdom to impart, and an overflow of love to give because his grandchildren are far away. He becomes a coming-of-age mentor to a youth whose grandparents are maybe too busy or out of town. The youth is looking for connection and acceptance. He's looking for a role model, for stories from an older generation, and for ways of being that are different from his grandparents' ways of being. Or maybe it is a middle-aged person who is recovering from addiction who also loves to quilt. They're looking for ways to use their hands, to occupy their time, to make amends, and to pass on a better legacy than before. And they team up with others to make a quilt for a new member who is a single parent, who is raising a 5-year-old and a toddler on their own with no help from their parents. The church throws a quilt shower to finish compiling the quilt and to show the single parent a radical and profound sense of community and acceptance, all wrapped up in a single piece of fabric stitched together with love and intention. This is a beautiful picture, right? And of course, we all desire our churches to be this space where want is met with plenty, where needs are met with fulfillment, and where the spirit of giving and receiving flows freely. But when I close my eyes and wonder about some of the obstacles that might get in the way of our giving and receiving, I think about the fact that sometimes we resist the urge to express our needs and desires. For you to receive the thing or the things that you need from this gathering of people, you need to know and admit that your body is tired. It becomes so vital for us to have the self-awareness and the courage to come together and express honestly where we are. We must name courageously our needs and desires. In beginning to understand that the vulnerability and the risk needed to build and strengthen a community is not only the risk to love people boldly, but also the vulnerability to let yourself be known and loved. I heard an excellent sermon over the holidays about the skill and practice of gift giving. And yes, it was preached by your senior minister, Kendall. She spoke about the importance of gift giving as a form of social bonding, a social contract of sorts. And it really got me thinking. The gift giving that happens in friendships is not some kind of transactional exchange where credits and debits are listed in a real or imagined ledger somewhere to see which friend has given the most often or given the most expensive gift or even the most thoughtful gift. And if I know anything about friendship, I know that the last thing that I want to hear when I give a friend a gift is, "Thank you so much. I will be sure to give you a gift of equal or greater value soon to repay you for this kindness." And yet, I'm sure that some of us still do feel the need to repay kindnesses and reciprocate the giving of gifts. For the past few years now, I've been consistently making the same joke whenever I find myself in a particular situation. The situation is this: when I am confronted head-on with someone's generosity, and I do not have the ability to repay the kindness at that time. Between being a seminary student and being an intern, I have had many needs. The need for conversation and companionship, thought partners, money, silliness and distraction, and just plain old food and coffee. Many friends have been coming out of the woodwork to help me meet some of these needs and give me gifts. And I have been so overwhelmed with gratitude. The joke I keep making is, well, I guess this is the universe's way of teaching me how to graciously accept gifts that I can't pay back. But I made the joke enough to start really thinking about it, and it reminded me of this time when I was in a pickle. I had run into some financial troubles and was in a bit of credit card debt. I was living in a very expensive city, and I was in that precarious post-college period where budgeting wasn't priority number 1, or even, priority number 10. Some of my friends had extra money and offered to loan me money so that I could get out of credit card debt quickly, and they worked with me to create a budget and repayment plan. These friends, as you can imagine, were not just smarter than I was financially, they were also wiser than I was about the importance of giving and receiving. They had the wherewithal to know that many of us are not super comfortable talking about money, and they wanted to be clear about opening a strong channel for communication. They didn't want their loan to get in the way of our friendship, or to create such a sense of debt in me that I started to internalize shame or to avoid them or any other number of possibilities. They knew intuitively the truth that it is really challenging to receive large gifts. It takes a special skill to express a need, especially a need that I was ashamed of, and to accept help when it was offered. And the beautiful part of that whole encounter was a thing that none of us had planned for. As it turned out, that loan was just the beginning of a number of ways that they showed their love and care for me. And the more I received from them, the more I gave to them, not out of debt or the need to reciprocate, but out of closeness and intimacy. Our giving and receiving went back and forth, and it deepened our bonds. They had trusted me with a large investment, and I trusted them back. I visited them overseas. I was in their wedding, and to this day, their children still call me Uncle Jack. Our capacity to love and care for one another has grown exponentially since those early days. But looking back, I can see that their initial trust in me with this gift and my acceptance of the gift were vital to the deepening of our friendships. What does this look like for you? When have you given greatly? When have you received greatly? What has happened when you tied the strings of connection to someone close to you? And what will it look like for this congregation to be a people who consciously give and receive gifts, many gifts? And not just gifts for the holidays, the gift of your financial support to the life of this congregation, the gift of your time and attention, your intentional presence, the gift of sharing your stories, the joys and the sorrows. We invest in each other and in communities in many different ways. And the investment isn't only financial, it's relational and challenging and emotional. Today, I have a final challenge for all of you. If you are a person who mainly focuses on giving to the church, will you focus for just a moment on what you receive from the church? What ways do your fellow congregants support and nurture you? If your answer is, they don't nurture me, then today's challenge is to dig deep for the courage to name one way that they could nurture you, and then tell someone. If you are a person who mainly focuses on what you get from church, will you focus for just a moment on what you can give to the church? What ways do your fellow congregants need support? If the answer is, I'm not sure, no one's telling me, then today's challenge is to listen. Maybe even find a friend and gently ask them, what do you need today? Let's be a community of giving and receiving. May it be so, and amen. Please rise in body or spirit for our closing hymn.
And love, he come with praise and thanks.
Whatever you're holding today, joy, anger, hurt, anticipation, or lamentation, know that it is honored here. We ask you to share yourself with others, and in that connection is the holy work of church. Go in peace and connection.